We have a visitor who's going to speak with us a little later. Our officers that are here supporting us, Megan that's here to provide admin for us, which is very helpful, and Justin who's going to offer any help or support that we may need as we move forward. And thank you to all of you. Mr. Stevens has arrived, and good to see you. We will press on, and it is good to see you, Ian. I know it's been a bit of a struggle for you with the operation and so on. So thank you for making the effort and energy to get here tonight, and we're good to see you. We'll move on. Apologies, there are no apologies. The minutes. Now we do have two sets of minutes. We have minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, of course. We have a substitution this evening, and the substitution is Councillor Mosdale, who is substituting for Councillor Brodie. Thank you for that. So let's move on to the minutes. There are minutes from the July meeting. If there are any comments about that. Okay. And we have the minutes from our September the 4th meeting. Are we happy to approve those minutes? Thank you. So Councillor Ward, seconded by Councillor John. Those in favour, please show that we're here. Thank you. That's those. Yeah, abstention of Councillor Stevens. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Public question time. I'm not aware of any public questions. There are no public questions. Therefore, we will move on to members' questions. Any members' questions? No members' questions. Therefore, we will move on to item 6, which requires, well, it says a decision, but it's to receive and consider the following item for decision. It's Yaverland Seapool proposal. What I intend to do is, is there anything you wish to speak to any of it?
I was going to say, Chair, did you want me to introduce the report?
Yeah, if we could introduce it,
for further
and
information.
I'm going to ask Sue Barker, who's taken the time to come tonight, to speak briefly on the project to us before we make any deliberations, questions and decisions. Claire.
Thank you, Chair, very much indeed. And it gives us pleasure to bring this report to the committee this evening. Just to start off with the fact that what we are looking for this evening is your support in principle to the proposed development at Yaverland. So Isle of Wight Seapool approached the council to explore the concept of developing a tidal sea pool at Yaverland. Since then, the group have been doing an enormous amount of work behind the scenes to develop the outline proposals, have engaged with public within the area, and they do now have a number of letters of support for the project. The recommendation within the report before you is now for us as a local authority to show in principle support for the project through a non-binding letter of intent. You'll be aware that the project requires creation on council land, and obviously we need to give an indication as to whether we're prepared to lease that land as part of the overall project. But the purpose of the letter of intent is to allow the Isle of Wight Seapool to go and now search for external funding to progress the project. And perhaps just important to note, which is contained within the report, that obviously this doesn't commit the council to any financial expenditure or formal agreements at this stage. It's to support Isle of Wight Seapool to go out and progress to the next stage. And I think failure not to show support this evening could adversely affect their ability to progress with the project itself. And the funding bodies clearly need quite clear support from the landowner that it's a project that's worth progressing. I think as it sets out in the report, this initiative we feel supports our goals for economic recovery, sustainable tourism, youth engagement, offers a safe, inclusive space for recreation and learning, and contributes potentially to crime reduction and community cohesion. Perhaps more importantly as well, it also underpins our approach for collaborative working with communities and partner organisations. So just to reinforce to you, the recommendation to the committee is that we confirm support in principle for the project and approve the letter of intent that's set out in Appendix 1, and that will enable Isle of Wight Seapool to go off and seek funding opportunities for the development of the tidal seapool.
Thank you, Claire. Look, let's take a proposal and a seconder. Thank you, Chris. He's proposing a seconder for that. Thank you. Now, what I'll do, Sue, would you like to just perhaps come up to the desk here, use the microphone, talk to us for your 3 minutes or so. Thank you so much. Just introduce yourself, Sue, please, to the committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the project. I'm, as you heard, Sue Barker. I'm one of currently 6 directors of the Isle of Wight Seapool. It's a community-based, volunteer-led, not-for-profit company, and we're currently applying for charitable registration. Open water swimming, especially in the sea, is a huge and growing local, national and international activity. The Seapool project is focused on providing a unique, low-maintenance, sustainable and accessible seawater asset for the island that the general public can use for free all year round. An open water destination worthy of the island that promotes healthy lifestyles, community engagement, appreciation of our coastal landscape and marine environment, and is a celebration of the island as a designated UNESCO biosphere. We are leading the way in the development of a sustainable tidal seapool fit for the needs of the 21st century. Our proposal to build on a sandy beach within and integrated with the sea defences as part of their refurbishment programme and the regeneration of Yaverland and Sandown has excited Bridgend County Borough Council, which has funded a feasibility study into a tidal pool on a sandy beach in the heart of Porthcawl as part of that area's regeneration. North Yorkshire Council, which has done the same for Scarborough and Selsey across the Solent from us, also plans to follow suit. The pool's eco-credentials, its marine habitats and marine lab have attracted 12 separate disciplines at the University of Southampton and more at the University of Portsmouth to explore and develop with us and our Vision's founders, Swim the Wight, citizen science projects on water quality, sustainable access to blue and green spaces, and the Natural Sciences Field Studies Centre, which, with our collaborators, Wild Heart Animal Sanctuary and Art Ecology, has evolved into the proposal to develop a school for international rewilding at Yaverland. The refurbishment of the sea defences at Yaverland provides an unmissable opportunity to build our pools sustainably with minimum disruption to our precious marine and land environments, one that will enhance the landscape, make the beach and the sea accessible for all, and show how sea defences can serve multiple purposes. We're delighted that the Bay Business Association, the Building the Bay Steering Group, Sandown Town Council, and our MPs, Joe Robertson and Richard Quigley, have all pledged their support for the project. Your agreement to support our Seapool in principle and the signing of the letter of intent is vital to the ongoing development of the project on council-owned land, as you've heard, at Yaverland, and our chances of success in gaining the appropriate investment, funding, planning approval and support we need to make our vision a reality and vitamin C truly accessible for all.
Thank you, Sue. That's really helpful. Any comments or questions, Chris, please?
A couple. The first one is a question, and that's about the Environment Agency. Certainly know about this because they've been presented with them at some of the Building the Bay type events. I think we need to be just reassured from the Environment Agency that the work isn't going to compromise what they're doing with the groins. I don't think it does, but I think we would need to, before any, not at this stage, but in the future, we would need to have that reassurance. And I've got the nod. I think we've got the reassurance.
Absolutely. We're working in partnership with the Environment Agency as well as obviously the council on this. And in fact, we've got an agreement in place verbally, which is essentially saying that we will follow their lead. So their designers are going to design the groins and then they're going to share those designs with our architects so that we can then build in our design into their design. That will then be evaluated by the Environment Agency team. And if it meets the bill, then they will cost it, and then we'll go. We're going together in parallel right the way through the next phase of development. And in no way will we compromise the work of the Environment Agency on the groins.
Thank you.
My other point,
Chris and then Ian.
but my other point is I only really know two sea pools, one in Devon and one in Bude in Cornwall. Certainly the one at Bude in Cornwall, although it's allegedly low maintenance, actually does cost many tens of thousands of pounds a year to actually keep free of seaweed and silt and salt and bits and pieces. And I just, I think that does need to be built into the plan as to how that will be. Yes, it doesn't affect what the wording of the letter, but I think it's something that does need to be built into the forward plan because there may be some significant costs hidden there because there are down in.
Thanks, Chris. Just briefly, this is quite exceptional that you wouldn't know the protocol procedure. It's quite exceptional. We've made an exception for you, Sue, because it's important that you get across. Normally our officers, our committee members will be addressing our officers for answers to the question. I think if we do that, we're at least sticking to the protocol. Claire.
Thank you. Both points very valid, and certainly they're part of the discussions that are taking place with Sue and the Iron White Sea Pool group that's taking the proposal forward. I think it's important just to remind ourselves that we're not at that stage yet. This is about us signaling our intent to support the project through that process. It's very clear that everything is going to be subject to the things that you've identified being explored and clarified and part of the overall programme. So that's a phase 2 piece of work, but they're very valid points and certainly on the radar. So thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Thank you, Chris. Ian.
Right. Thank you. As you're aware, I'm one of the ward councillors for Sandown. This is not in my ward, but I am greatly interested and it will be a huge benefit to Sandown. Over the last few years, we've lost out on millions of investment, commercial investment money, nothing to do with the council, I will assure you. And I think this will be a good example for other investors to see that you can invest in Sandown. I've had feedback where people have said, oh, it's not worth investing in Sandown anymore. And I think that's a tremendous shame, and I find it quite hurtful. This is brilliant for our town. I've had people who have supported it coming to me. I've had people who make negative comments. And also one of the negative comments are about, oh, do we really want it? Do we need this? We've got plenty of sea anyway. and all it's going to cost us, we can use that money for something else. I don't think a lot of people realise this is not a cost to the Isle of Wight Council. And I would like to make that point publicly clear. This is not an Isle of Wight Council project. It's not a cost to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, for making that point. It's well made as well. Ed?
Thank you, Chair. I went and spoke to Sue and Victoria, who's joined us online, and we had a good discussion actually about the locality and the concept. I have some concerns about the initial drawings, but I wish to point out to the people out there that have got concerns. This isn't like a pseudo planning application being approved here. This is very much a case of we're just allowing rolling the turf, as it were, to allow them to carry on with any funding, carrying on with their process. So there will be plenty of opportunity for the public to have their input, and that I'm sure they'll take them up on that. But I say that this is a brilliant scheme potentially for Sandown, and I echo Councillor Ward's views on that. And we need to get any form of regeneration we can on the island. We've got to grab opportunities with both hands, and this is one we need to grab.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you for making that point about the planning as well. That's helpful to get that message out. I'm glad to hear how important it is to Sandown as well. Jonathan, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very strongly in support of this. I first became aware of this project, I think it was 4 years ago. There was a presentation at, I can't remember which hotel in Sandown, a number of projects being put forward to develop Sandown seafront, and this was one of them. And it was interesting from the off, and I'm really pleased to see that it has grown and developed since that point to the proposal we're seeing today. I have kept an eye on it and spoken to Sue a number of times about it. It really is a good project, and it does tie in with some of the other things that are going on in Sandown, particularly with organisations like Wild Heart Trust, and of course, as we've heard, with the Environment Agency and maintaining the coastal protection there. As has been alluded to, there are other examples of such projects around the country, and they are impressive and successful, and I think that's what we could have here. Much work has gone into this. It has many potential benefits, both environmental and health benefits for the community. As has been said a number of times, it's not a risk to the council, but if we were not to support it, it would place the project in serious difficulty. There's absolutely no need for us to take such a retrograde step. So I hope everyone will support this as a potential jewel in the crown for Sandown seafront going forward.
Thank you, Jonathan. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I'd echo the comments there of Councillor Bacon and others. I'm certainly very happy to support this in principle. I think one thing I'd like to explore, and perhaps Mashan can say if you've had discussions along these lines, is these involve council assets. To what extent, in terms of the governance and delivery of the completed project, could it be that the council has a role in that? Have you explored those lines of governance? Because I think wherever we do have a council asset, we cannot divorce ourselves entirely from the way in which that asset is then used and the service is delivered, particularly when we are so closely associated with that. But I'll be interested in your thoughts on that, Shand.
Yes, of course, and that'll be part of the next phase of the project should the project be successful in securing funding. Because it's not just a pure case of providing a lease for a piece of land, that there are other arrangements that would need to go around that, and certainly we've already factored in those considerations as part of what would need to be done as the next phase of the project. So there's a number of parties that come to the table in this respect: Environment Agency, ourselves, Seapool, that all will have some collective responsibility. Although the council is not funding it and it's not a council project, as you rightly say, it's land that is owned by the local authority. And so we want to be seen to be working in partnership, but for every party to be clear about their roles and responsibilities in the delivery of whatever the outcome is.
That's very helpful, because where projects do fail, and I'm not anticipating in any way that the project would fail, even when councils have been separate from that, it does fall back onto the authorities as through reputational damage and the undermining of trust in councils. And I think perhaps we have seen that a little bit here on the Isle of Wight. However, looking into this and certainly look at their own website, looking at all the other projects, the North Yorkshire one, for example, is really interesting in terms of the detail of the studies there as well. This doesn't seem a faddish thing. And certainly when I've mentioned it to people that this is the decision I'm part of tonight, I've had people of all ages basically saying the same thing. Oh, brilliant. And because they know of sea pools and tidal pools that they have themselves experienced. So I will be voting yes when it comes to that point.
True. You better be prepared for all the influx of visitors coming to Sandown, Ian. Chris?
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to inquire about what the anticipated financing model is long-term for this, and in particular, an assurance that users of the pool will not be charged for using the pool.
It's not,
The
it's
sort
not,
of
it's
commitment.
certainly not a question that I can answer, because obviously it's a project. So yeah, it depends on whether, Chair, you feel that's a question that can be
I
posed
think
at this time.
Councillor Chalmers was interested in the sort of commitment to be, is it a commercial enterprise or something that is, no, okay.
What I can say is obviously the granting of any lease would be subject to a robust business case. So that would be the responsibility of Isle of Wight Sea Pool to prepare, present, and for us to assess in terms of its longer term sustainability.
Any further questions?
Just
Ed,
a very
yeah.
quick procedural one. Claire, would any future release, would that include removal costs being set aside as part of that?
There would always be that part of those would be part of the considerations, as we've talked about in terms of kind of the governance bit of these things. It's making sure that in making available an asset, that all of those considerations have been taken into account as part of whether you enter into an agreement. So Sue will know that, you know, that's part of the discussions that we've had, that if it gets to a point where it, for whatever reason, may no longer be a viable option to continue, that's factored in as part of that overall business planning that would give the council the assurance that when it gets the asset back, that it's in the same state as it was when we had it in the first place. It's the kind of standard stuff really that you would expect any process to follow in that respect. But without, you know, the other thing that you kind of have to take into account a part of that is what's reasonable in terms of the kind of that negotiation process. But Sue is clear that, you know, from our point of view, the expectations is that it's not just about providing this for the short term. We have to look at it from a long-term perspective. And I know that Sue's been factoring that into their considerations as part of the business planning.
Thank you, Claire. Are we done on questions? Oh, Councillor Stevens, welcome.
Thank you. I thought I'd better have a couple of words as I've turned up and listened to everyone that's put their concerns and opinions forward. I think I'll support it, but there are just a few things. I've been through the notes here and in the paper, and there's a few bits that do concern me. One is that the sea defence is going to be incorporated into it. Now, this is all going to come out in the wash. I understand that as we progress, but I've got to point this out now, that if we are endeavouring to renew or make good anything on our sea defence side, then what we want to do is make sure that any agreement takes that into consideration, that we're not going to be at loggerheads. Likewise, I suggest that we do build in a review over periods of time to make sure that all is up to standard and other such things. Big worry is, as you know, Ryde Harbour and the silting up and the blowing of the sand, and it stops at Ryde Harbour, and then the other side is devoid of much sand. Now, if you're going to position a facility like this in the middle of a sandy beach, then you might well cause grief on the other side. I know this is all going to be looked at, and I feel I'm jumping the gun here. So I did say that I'm going to support it, but there are things that really need to be teased out with this, and I think every member around this committee at the moment has got these ideas of what there could be and couldn't be, and what the concerns are. So I just want to say that I'll be supporting this paper and the letter of intent, but I'll also be saying that there are some caveats there that really we need to look at to make sure that we do things responsibly with our estate, shall I say, which aren't going to cost us, the Isle of Wight Council and the council taxpayer, funding, such as removal of sand and silt and other such things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
I was only going to just comment. I mean, I was just going to respond to Councillor Stevens and say, yes, you are jumping the gun a little bit, but like Councillor Quirk, those are extremely important points. They are on the radar and they will be part of those considerations going forward.
No further questions. Look, it's been, thank you, Sue. Appreciate your attendance and your kind words and explanation about it. It's been proposed, seconded. Those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you all. That leaves us only to look at the committee work plan. Last page in our papers, if you've got the paper copy. If there's anything on it that you want to talk about, yeah, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of items I'd like to introduce some clarification on. The first one is the service performance and improvement, which is item 1 on the list. I'd like to make sure, detail is always important on these things, that we include on there an update on the PFI contract, and in particular the KPIs that are there. That's information that we already have as a council. It's already something that's maintained on an ongoing basis. And in particular, any performance or fiscal departures or variances which have been granted, or indeed contested items which exist in that. So in looking at that as a service performance issue, obviously it's a contracted issue, it's important to get into that level of detail. Thank you. The second thing I'd like to do is on the budget setting process. At a previous meeting here, we asked the Chief Executive, as part of the budget setting process, in particular the cost saving element, given that we're now appraised of the magnitude of that, I think it would be only appropriate to reflect on the figure that we gave her previously, which indicated we were looking for her to come forward with a suggestion for how £500,000 could be taken out of the contract and external fees that we are often encumbered by, and perhaps ask her to reflect on that by providing options in addition to the 500 at the 750,000 and 1 million level. The level of savings are considerably higher than I think any of us would ever have forecast, and so that's one area where we could look to make additional savings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. We've made a note of that. Yeah, we've made a note of that, Chris. I'll come to you, Claire. Chris, is there anything you want to talk about there? Is there anything in that requirement? I mean, we're asking the Chief Exec here, but is there something you want to comment on that before I come to Claire?
Only just a point of clarification for my own benefit. Was Chris or Councillor John, were you referring to the Highways PFI contract when you had quoting the 500,000, 0.75 and £1 million? Yeah.
I heard the word contract too, Chris. Which contract are we talking about? That's considerably more difficult on the basis that we've already taken £1.5 million out of the contract with a requirement to find 2 million.
I wasn't looking to take further money out of it. All I wanted was to include in the update that we got what the KPIs are on that. The actual savings relating to the 751 million are on the budget setting item, which is item 2 on the list.
Understood. Have you understood that?
Sorry, I know that this is my misunderstanding, so I apologise in advance. The sums that you're referring to relate to just savings in general or savings against a particular type of service activity?
So the previous discussion was that the chief executive would come back to us with a proposal for how £500,000 could be taken out of the current costs to the council of contractors and external fees. For example, I know a great deal of those come under Justin's heading, under the legal department. And what we're doing is we're saying that now we have a better appraisal for what the need for cost savings are, that we should ask her to extend that option, not only for the £500,000 that she's already working on, but for a 750 and 1 million proposal as well. Thank you.
It's because she hasn't come back quick enough. We increase it every time. Wait, I can't get the message.
I'm not suggesting, Chair, that we ask for 2 million.
Contractors, not contracts. Okay, that's noted, Chris. Claire.
Thank you. It's only quickie, having looked at the work plan and having once been a cabinet member, and knowing that this time of year is incredibly busy. I was really surprised to come to this meeting and find that the only thing that came to this meeting was a discussion on letter of intent about a sea pool. I really would like to see on the work plan, however we framed it, some assurance from officers that large financial decisions are not being made outside of councillors being updated and informed and being part of that decision-making process. I was really surprised to come to this meeting and find out, I was expecting to have a week's worth of reading, and it took me a whole half an hour. Yeah, it wasn't that long. Speed like that. So I would like to see on the work plan somewhere that we have an update that actually there aren't big financial decisions being made or lots of decisions being made without the involvement of councillors, because this, having been a cabinet member, feels that there is definitely very selective choice on what is coming to this committee. So if we could have we don't need to discuss it this evening, but it would be really interesting to have something on the work plan that says, what would have been decided by cabinet, what is now being decided by the committee system, because this is a decision-making committee, and what is falling between the gaps. And that would be a really interesting and open discussion between officers in this committee, because I can't see all those huge decisions we used to make as a cabinet. They've got to be going somewhere and being made by somebody. So I'd like to see that in the work plan, not a discussion for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. We'll take that away. We need some sort of explanation. It does seem, tonight we've had one item. It was for essentially no financial input to this council. We've made the decision to support it. It's very great. I'm glad we did one item. And looking on the full plan, there are 3 for November: service performance improvement update on budget setting process. I expect that's Chris telling us how much money he's found since we last met. And the island planning strategy update that's going to full council anyway. I mean, I take your point, Claire. There doesn't seem much work coming through this committee.
It's either that this council has ground to a halt and no decisions are being made, or someone is making the decisions. But this committee should be having far more coming to it than this. Thank you.
But your point's well made, but that we need an explanation, I think,
Thank you.
whatever it is. Ian,
I was before councillor Mosdale. I was before, yeah, I was before councillor Mosdale, so I'm definitely before you, councillor Garrett. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't want that anyway, because I'm going to follow on from that now, because I was a little bit concerned about a couple of these items on here, and the budget is most definitely the most important thing that we're going to be pushing forward on in the coming months. Now, to me, it seems isolated out there. Councillor Mosdale's pointed out. And I really would like to see, even informally, what the structure is for taking forward our budget proposals this year. Now, I know that there's other committees, etc., that are going to be talking things through. But as Councillor Mosdale said, it's a decision on finance. And really, we need to get a grasp of it, not only the amount of funding involved, but also the impact, etc. And that's the big, those are the big things that we can sit here and we can come through with a balanced budget, hopefully, and we can actually turn around and say, yes, this is good, we balance the books, but then we also have to carry the impact assessments on various areas of service. I'm a bit concerned on that. So if we could start to look at what is happening elsewhere that we can actually key into, I'd you know, even informally, Chair, I'd be a bit more comfortable with the procedure. And could I just say that the last item on the forward plan, it's coming from council, the land and property asset disposal policy review. I'd like to have seen that further up the because we've been wrestling with that since January, February of this year, and I'd like to have seen that moved up the table. Especially, we could have possibly touched on it this evening. Thank you.
thank you. Is there something you want to address? I know you sent around a timetable, Chris, but it was fairly broad. I think Ian's asking for a little more than just a broad timetable. We could do it informally if you wish. Not your answer now, that needs to be formal, but.
Yeah, of course. And Councillor Stevens, you'd probably be aware there's been 2 informal committee meetings on the budget process so far. Unfortunately, you've been otherwise predisposed. And we have, as you say, Chair, we have gone through the timetable at a high level. We anticipate looking at some of those matters that you mentioned in about the middle towards the end of this month. And there was a broad timetable set out. So hopefully that we'll be able to address your concerns in the informal meetings that are to come, which are now set up on a 2-weekly basis.
Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. My comments too are on the budget setting process. One thing I would have been expecting to see is more something that says, here are the options for savings being brought forward through this committee and through the service committee. So I was looking at the work plan for the ERTI committee, the Economy, Regeneration, Transport and Infrastructure Committee. It doesn't appear to contain upon its work plan a reference to the budget setting, and yet that would be the committee that naturally should be considering options for indicative savings in its area of responsibility. So what I would very much be thinking we'd be expecting by early November or by our next meeting is a sense of where those indicative savings are, what those options are. My experience under having been on a cabinet committee, a cabinet system in another council, we would bring forward a long list, and in open session that cabinet would make those decisions as to which things would already be redlined out. This council itself, under the previous Conservative administration, bravely did that once before Christmas, and Councillor Ward argued very strongly against certain car parking charges proposals, I recall from that time. we are a collective executive responsibility, but we will still have those responsibilities to choose and to defend those choices. And we can only do those if those choices come before us. So I'm looking for reassurance that on the timetable of when those choices will come, so that we can make sensible choices, and sensible choices that aren't so close to the budget setting process that any pitfalls, and we have had pitfalls before, organisations coming and saying, but did you realise the impact of what you're proposing? And it's been so close to the February decision date that it's been hard to kind of work around that. So the earlier the better. I'm very much interested to hear what the Section 151 officer is anticipating on bringing through to all of the service committees in terms of the process of presenting them with options on indicative savings.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah,
Do you want to comment, Chris, or you're small asking for any money? You always smile when there's no money involved. You were very happy at the last item when no money was involved. I could see that.
You spotted it then, Chair. Yeah. It's the same. It's the same. Sorry, Councillor Garrett. It's the same response. We had a discussion. We have had some discussions about it informally. The expectation at the moment, the officers are working through those options at this stage. They haven't been through a senior management review process yet, and we're anticipating that towards the middle of this month. As soon as that process has gone through, to make sure that there's proper, we've connected, we've properly considered and connected all of the dots, as it were, then we obviously bring it through to you as a first cut for your consideration. So, as I mentioned, we're anticipating that should come forward towards the end of this month.
Thank you. You okay, Andrew? John, you okay?
Yes, just so long as there is a clear understanding that there is that the governance side of things, we are the choice makers. So don't be afraid to put before us difficult choices. We are the ones. Don't try to take that responsibility from us. We will shoulder that burden. Or we should shoulder that burden at least.
Chris will give you some choices, Andrew. Jonathan, then Ed.
It was a clarification really on the back of what Councillor Garrett has said. And he did mention at the end of his words that this should be all committees, because I think you initially referred to the, I can never remember the name, it's now becoming the ERTI committee, isn't it? The economy committee, but all of them should do that. But I would really wonder, we're hearing that it will come to this committee, should not those committees get a first swipe at going through things otherwise? And because if it comes to us and then it's got to go to them and then come back to us, we are going to end up in that situation where time is so tight. We've got our hands behind our backs on some issues. I'd really thought that this should be going to those individual committees as soon as at their next meetings, and then coming to us once they have had a go at looking at those, so that we are informed in making some of those decisions we will have to make fairly early on.
Ed.
Chair, just on we're talking about the property, just asset disposal. Yeah, sorry, I'm mind blank on it. And at the same time, can we please look at? I believe the property services team want to suggest a new mechanism to speed up their workings. We know they're a heavily pressurised team, massively under-resourced currently, and I think they would appreciate a chance to put a new mechanism in front of us. Not in terms of, not talking about redoing the, or Peter gets up in arms. I'm not overriding that. But just there's some things in their day-to-day working that we could facilitate them to work a bit easier.
Claire, then I'll come to Claire. Claire.
Thank you. If I can just respond to that, because I know Councillor Stevens also referred to property and assets. I have been liaising with the team and was going to propose that there are several items relating to land and property come assets come to the next three committees. So there are some key decisions that we will need from this committee around some land and property issues, which I propose they come to November with your permission. Maybe the December meeting that we can look to consider some of that kind of fine tooth aspects of the policy. And then what I would like to present to you in January is that list of assets that would form part of that, kind of review process, if that's helpful to
In
you.
January.
Yes.
Ed just wants to come back and I'll come to you.
Very quickly, can we also have some clarity on what's happening with Elmdon? Not now, but.
No, that's one of the reports that will come to your
Oh,
next
sorry.
committee.
Come to you. I'm happy, and you probably know this, but that you may know. One of the unforeseen consequences of that policy was any renewal of a lease that's over 7 years has to go through the process of being considered for social housing. And that it is quite clearly in some certain situations, so absolutely unrequired, because it could be a fact, well, in fact are factory units here, factory units elsewhere.
think
And
one
we're
of the-
having to consider them to be housing to be built on the site because of the way the policy is written.
I think one of them was the AstroTurf that the planned community are trying to get hold of, I believe, and that's being held up because of that, which is an unforeseen circumstance that needs to be flushed out.
For examples of it. Claire, thanks, Ed.
Thank you. And having listened to the very useful conversations that we've had today and taking on board what Councillor Garrett said, and quite clearly said to Chris Ward, please make sure that officers don't burden themselves with all the responsibility. What we don't want to do is see that these budget proposals come to these committees and they're just a fait accompli. As this is the committee that sits above other committees, my suggestion would be this evening that we make some form of decision that actually all committees have anything that's relevant to budgets put on their agendas. And it needs to be a separate item on those agendas. One, because it will help the working with this committee, but it will also take away officers feeling at the moment that they're lost within the committee system. Who's going to make a decision? Well, actually, it should be those committees should be the decision makers. So actually, I think we should propose as this committee that the next meetings or whatever those proposals are, go to those individual committees and then feed back up to here. We need to make sure that it isn't, can't think of any other better way of saying it, but ask about face, basically. Don't print it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a clear message coming across. It wouldn't be revealing any secret to say that the directors all been asked to provide you with certain suggested savings.
In the background, we've got a well-worn process, which is at the outset, we'll set some savings targets on a committee by committee basis, and we'll use the same formulaic methodology. And ultimately, hopefully, you will receive a list of options that achieve those targets, but with hopefully some room for maneuver so that you're able to exercise your strategic and political choice. So that's the process that's in train at the moment. There is, I think you're all right. There is a discussion to be had about what that process best looks like. Is it something that, because ultimately it will be this committee that makes the recommendation to council. I mean, there's a blunt tool approach which says this committee just issues targets to each of the other committees, and you have to meet it. If you do it the other way around and say, please tell us what you're able to achieve, you might not get very much. So I think there's a discussion to be had about what the process ought to be so that we end up in a position that you are able to ultimately put forward a budget that is capable of being adopted by full council.
Thank you, Mr. Ward, but I revert back to what I previously said. Having been a cabinet member before, at this period of time, we would be going through a series of what we used to call the star chambers. So the cabinet member would sit and have a grilling with the list of proposals of what could be done and couldn't be done. The whole point of the committee system was to bring this out open and transparent so the public see the difficult decisions that this council has to make. So what we can't have, my original starting point was, what is missing on this agenda and what is being decided by officers and discussed without being in the public face or even informally with councillors. So at this point in time, we would be having dates. If you were a cabinet member, you'd be having dates in your diary to have your style chambers. You know, what is going to be the bits that's going to, here is the whole list of things, some completely impalatable, some not. Those need to go somewhere and not just be a closed behind doors situation, that when it comes to these committees, the officers have already fed out, you know, weeded out all the unpalatable, because actually council taxpayers have a right to see what those difficult decisions are. And the whole point of the committee system was to be open and transparent about it. Those decisions are being made and those discussions are being made somewhere. And at that point, they should already be hitting these committees. That was my original point, and that's the bit that I want to see. And at the moment, I'm being very meek and mild about it, but next time I won't, as you know.
Thank you, Claire. Do you want to answer? I was thinking of another.
Councillor Moster, I mean, what you're describing is perfectly correct. We're not at that stage yet. So the decisions that you're expecting to see have not been made. There's no self-censorship, if you like, that is taking place. But what you would expect, I think, is to receive recommendations or options from your senior management team. So that's the process that we're going through at the moment. There's no filtering. I mean, from my perspective, as you'll probably know, because I've probably put it on just about every budget presentation I've ever done, which is nothing is ruled out at the outset. So you will only things that, if there's something that is absolutely incorrect, that the senior management team need to take a review of, because it might not be legal, for example, it might be an opportunity that's put forward that is not legal. We would strike that out, obviously. We wouldn't put something before you that wasn't capable of being adopted. So we're going through that process at the moment. What you will see will be something that hasn't had any red lines put through it. It will be the full, raw and total options that you will then be making judgments and decisions around.
Thank you. My last word on it, I would just like some reassurance that after this meeting, you speak to the chief executive and said it's been strongly fed from this committee, that all committees and all directors of whoever they're feeding into, say, for example, for Children's Committee, that those directors know that those budget proposals have to go to that committee and they are set on the agenda, and it's agreed with the chairs that those go onto the agendas in the right timings for it. If we don't do that, we'll leave this meeting and then it will suddenly become January and agendas will have happened, meetings will have happened, and that will be forgotten about. And it's really important that those discussions, the difficult discussions, are had at this committee levels and the levels below. So I think that would be really good if you could take that back to the chief executive and report back that that's the feeling, hopefully, from this committee.
Okay, that's noted anyway. You want to speak to that as well?
Only if you say to me that is the feeling of the committee. At the moment, Councillor Mosdale, you're one member of the committee. So
Nodding their heads, I can feel
if
it.
that is, then obviously that's what I will do.
Would you like me to propose it and we move to a vote? Would that make you happy?
So what's interesting, I'm going to come to the question then, Ian, but just before I do, so it's triggered some ideas in my mind about things this committee might need to look at, perhaps should be on the full plan, where we may wish to intervene in something. I'll give you an example in a moment, that produces either a savings or an income that can be offset against savings. So, for example, if we were to buy houses that we could take people out of temporary accommodation into, and the numbers demonstrated that there was an actual overall saving to the council. We'd like to have sight of some of that. And equally, and I know, and the Director of Children's Services here, there were suggestions for a similar projects for children where investment in accommodation provided a saving to this council. So alongside all the budget stuff and the options that are going to come forward, whenever they come forward, there is this other realm or other areas of things that the committee might like to be looking at. Just making a point. Chris and then Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've probably heard the answer to this already, but what I was looking for was an assurance that the list that would come forward to every committee was a completely unfettered list of all of the mitigation proposals that were being brought forward to by the relevant departments. If it happens that some of the items on there, to use your example, are illegal, then they should be noted as illegal, or in other words, some other reason why they cannot go forward, so that people see that. The key is that each committee has a complete list of all proposals coming forward, unfettered, albeit annotated by yourselves as officers. And some of those might be marked as, let's say, red because they're illegal, some of them amber, not recommended, and some of them green, recommended. Not that I'm telling you how to do your job, but something along that order to each department might be very clear and transparent. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. That's noted. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. This all sounds wonderful. Marvellous that we're going to put on display, correct me if I'm wrong, in a RAG system, all the proposals that come forward that might affect a small charity here, underprivileged or people in need of a service elsewhere, and we set everyone running to the hills. Now, am I reading this correctly? Because the one thing that the cabinet system did have, and Councillor Mosdale and Ian here realise, is that those difficult decisions were held in. Now, I think that what we've got is now, okay, we've got a committee system. We're going to be open and transparent with everyone, but we're going to cause a lot of grief to individuals, organisations, possibly businesses, and other stakeholders. So I'm going to leave it at that. But we've got to be extremely careful. I know Councillor Moswell is going to come in and tell me how we're going to do it, and that's going to be brilliant. So we'll move on from here, but you can see the situation with the committee system and how it's going to be managed, and the cabinet system, how it was managed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Claire, then.
Only quickly, Councillor Garrett did mention it before that in the past we did actually have the full unpalatable list brought to the public, and actually everybody discussed it in a public and it was actually really useful. There was nobody go running to the hills or anything like that, because the first thing you did was, when those lists went to the committee, was the explanations that these are rated, and if they are rated, people will see what is really unpalatable, not what you can't do and whatever. It didn't send anybody. It was a very open, in public conversation, and the stuff that was unpalatable got taken off. But it did show how difficult these decisions and the financial decisions had to be made. So I do think it should be held in public, and go to the committee. Sorry.
There, and I know that Ian, as a cabinet member, experienced that colour system. We did, and they're tough lists to go through, I can tell you. Andrew.
Hopefully to sort of finish on that, I think this has been a useful discussion, because we're still, unfortunately, possibly the only time we'll go through a budget setting here on the Isle of Wight Council under a committee system. So we'll learn once and never have to do it again, because the government has so chosen to revert us to cabinet system. I wouldn't go quite as far as Councillor Jarman on a completely unfettered list. I don't need to have every last idea that occurred at 2 a.m. in the morning, which somebody woke up with and then has to be reported to us. I do have confidence in the office to understand well, certainly what is illegal, and just simply not place that before us. That's a very obvious thing that just shouldn't be coming before us. But also to recognise that informal discussions with this committee are a sensible way of testing some of those things. But it is about getting that balance of discussion right, so that ultimately we are clearly be seen as the accountable body. The council is the accountable body. That the bad news is because we had decided that the only things available to us were to be the bad news, and hopefully the good news as well. That is my vision for the committee system. The committee system is about ensuring that the public knows that the people they are elected are the accountable people, and we can't shy away from the responsibilities we have as decision makers. I think we probably had enough on that, and Chris Ward is already now thinking I simply won't go to sleep because he then won't have the wrong ideas.
Thank you, Andrew. I message that we're open to informality in all of this, if that enables some of this work to move further and farther to the formality of setting the eventual setting the budget. Any further comments on this? I think we've had a good go at this. Yeah. Look, thank you all. That is the last item of the agenda. It's 6:01, just 1 hour. Yep, it's over. I'll close the meeting 1 minute past 6. Thank you for your attendance, everyone.